So who was Jesus anyway? Was he simply a great teacher? Or was he a wonderful and kind religious man only? Was he a specially created man whom God used in a very special way? Was he simply a powerful prophet? There are different religious systems that say things like this about Jesus. These statements, or something close to them, come from the Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Islam, Freemasonry, Orthodox Judaism, and other religious systems that deny the deity of Jesus. Of course, there are ridiculous claims as well, impossible to substantiate, that Jesus is simply an imaginary figure of history, that he never existed in the first place. The problem here is that there is more ancient manuscript evidence of the New Testament biblical text than for any other 10 pieces of classical literature combined. The sole purpose of the New Testament documents is to attest to the Jesus event. This event is attested to in great detail in the time of the living eyewitnesses to his life and ministry. Outside of the biblical documents are a plethora of historical documents which attest to the Jesus event, including his miracles, crucifixion, and resurrection. No, Jesus certainly existed. There can be no honest or scholarly denial of that fact. So the question still remains, who was he? The answer has to begin with who Jesus claimed that he was. Let's hear just a few of Jesus' own words as recorded in the New Testament documents. From John chapter 10, verse 30. I and the Father are one. The Jews then took up stones again to stone him. Jesus answered them, I showed you many good works from the Father, for which of them are you stoning me? The Jews answered him, For a good work we do not stone you, but for blasphemy, and because you, being a man, make yourself out to be God. And from John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on you know him, and you have seen him. Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. Jesus said to him, Have I been so long with you, and yet you have not come to know me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. How do you say then, Show us the Father? And from John 11, verse 25. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me shall live, even if he dies. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? And then listen to these amazing prophecies from the books of Isaiah, Zechariah, and Malachi, written hundreds of years before the Christ event, about God in the flesh and his visit to earth. From Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin or the young unmarried woman will be with child and will give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel, which is the Hebrew for God with us. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. From Micah chapter 5, verse 2, But you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old, from ancient times, or eternity, or from everlasting. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 10, Shout and be glad, O daughter of Zion, for I am coming, and I will live among you, declares the Lord Yahweh. Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. God continues to speak, and he says, And I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. And they will look upon me, the one whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. So the collective prophecy is that God himself would dwell among his people, that he would come as a child, born of a woman in the normal human way. The scriptures declare that this birth would take place in Bethlehem. We learn that he would be Emmanuel, or God with us, as it is translated from the Hebrew. He would clearly be called the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, for that is who he is. God himself tells us that the world would know him as, or call him, the Son, or the only begotten of God, and that we would eventually pierce him through, not recognizing who he really was. All of this sounds familiar, doesn't it? It makes you think of only one figure in all of human history. So here is the evidence we have. Jesus fulfilled these and many other prophecies of the coming presence of God with us in exacting detail. Out of the billions who have ever lived, he is the only human to have fulfilled every one of these prophecies. On top of that, he claimed to be equal with the Father. He claimed to be the Father. He claimed that he and he alone could give everlasting life. He claimed directly that if anyone had seen him, they had seen God in the flesh. The prophecies and the claims are undeniable, indisputable. The question is, what do we do with these claims? I suppose most anyone could make the claim that they are God with us. So you may dismiss Jesus as a simple liar if you choose. However, there is nothing in any recorded document of history that is in our possession that implicates Jesus in a single lie. It seems that he was the most truthful person who ever lived. He did everything he ever claimed that he would do. To dismiss him as a mere liar certainly is not logical. You might dismiss him as a raving lunatic. Anyone claiming to be God without backing it up could be labeled as such. But how do we account for the miracles that only God could do that were done by Jesus? How do we account for his voluntary trip to a Roman cross? And most importantly, how do we account for an empty tomb and 2,000 years of it remaining empty? Jesus did all he said he would do, including dying on a cross and rising from the dead. How many lunatics do you know who have ever pulled off anything like this? None, of course. No, he cannot be simply dismissed as a lunatic. There really is only one option left. That is, he was who he said he was. He was the Lord, Emmanuel, God with us, the mighty Father, the child who was to be born, God in the flesh, the Father in human form. No, he was not simply a good person, a great prophet, or a religious figure. Certainly he was all of those things, but he never left it open to us that this was all that he was. For he claimed to be God with us. Either he is or he is not. Either he is a liar or a lunatic, or the Lord himself. He has done his part. Now the choice is yours. As for me, I will serve Jesus, my Lord, my Savior, and God with us.